Welcome to Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast.
I'm Benjamin Windybank.
I'm Jack Collison.
And I'm Callum Bowen.
Coming up on Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast, we take a deeper look at the EBU's policies surrounding press accreditation. We look back on the American Song Contest and just how it's influenced the main show. And we break down the latest news surrounding the shows in Basel.
I hope this contest can live up to its promise and continue to stand for peace and dignity for every person.
This is Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, a bit of housekeeping. You might notice we're slightly different. We have revamped, we've revitalised, and we've got a new roster of people on the podcast. So as we have done every time we've introduced a new host, I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and tell us your favourite Eurovision song ever.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm from Lancashire in the United Kingdom. I've been a Eurovision fan all my life and I've been in collaboration with the Vote for the Music team for about a year. I previously worked for another Eurovision outlet, but we parted ways on mutual terms. My favourite Eurovision song ever? Well, that would have to be Cliché Love Song by Basel, Denmark, 2014.
Hi, I'm Callum. I'm a Eurovision fan from Wales in the United Kingdom. If you've heard of Wales, that might be because we showed up twice at Junior Eurovision a few years back. Elsewise, we're that little bit of land attached to the left side of the UK just next to Ireland. I've been watching Eurovision since about 2014, but my favourite Eurovision song ever would have to be the Greek entry in 2010, Opa.
Thank you for that, and certainly some interesting choices there. So to start off with our first item on today's show, I believe Jack wants to talk a bit about the EBU in what's becoming quite frequently fairly alarming behaviour.
So, this year, the EBU has made significant changes to the Eurovision Song Contest's press accreditation system, officially as a response to the issues that occurred in Malmö in 2024. But the reality behind those changes and who they impact tells a very different story to the one the EBU is presenting publicly. Now, the official line is that due to exceptional media interest in the host country this year and limited capacity, they've had to prioritise press accreditation for outlets with the highest reach and those based in participating countries. They also said they cannot accommodate all requests from individual outlets. On paper, that might sound reasonable, but in practice, the only outlets denied accreditation appear to be the ones who were critical of the EBU last year, particularly those who spoke out against their handling of Israel's participation in the contest, and their refusal to engage with multiple complaints about harassment and misconduct in Malmö. To give context, the EBU faced widespread scrutiny in Malmö due to multiple allegations of inappropriate and hostile behaviour from some press representatives inside the arena. Most notably, several reports highlighted an Israeli press organisation which allegedly harassed delegations, filming and photographing artists without consent, including members of the Dutch delegation. It's been strongly suggested that this harassment was one of the key triggers in the sequence of events that led to the disqualification of Joost Klein, the Dutch artist. That incident, combined with the overall tense atmosphere in Malmö Arena, led many to assume the EBU would revise its press policies to prevent something like this happening again. But instead, the new accreditation process appears to be less about safety and more about censorship. The EBU has seemingly used Malmö as justification for shutting out independent and critical voices. If you're listening, you've probably heard of ASC Gabe, who is one of the most prominent Eurovision journalists at the moment. With over 35,000 YouTube subscribers and videos frequently reaching hundreds of thousands of views, his platform is one of the largest in the fan media ecosystem. He was fully accredited for both Liverpool 2023 and Malmö 2024, but this year his application was rejected. Gabe has been openly critical of the EBU's decisions around Israeli and Azerbaijani participation, and he also submitted a formal complaint to the EBU after experiencing harassment by the Israeli press delegation in Malmö. According to him, that complaint was ignored completely. He's not alone in being shut out. This has systematically happened to dozens and dozens of community media organisations this year. And yes, that includes us. We were accredited in both Liverpool 2023 and Malmö 2024 too. While we didn't speak out directly against Israel's participation last year, we chose not to cover Israel's entry in our coverage. We also wrote a formal letter to the EBU in February around Clemens Laconja's participation for Slovenia and his use of blackface to promote his ASC participation. We didn't call for his disqualification, but rather for the EBU to take a further look into the issue, understand why people of colour were offended, even if Dave Benton wasn't, and look into further action, ranging from small scale to large scale. We believe this is the primary factor we did not receive accreditation. Meanwhile, the very same Israeli media organisation accused of harassing delegations in Malmö, and who many believe were central to the events that caused Joost Klein's disqualification, have been granted full accreditation for Basel. This is not a coincidence. This is not a capacity issue. This is a pattern. It's worth remembering that the EBU prides itself on defending press freedom. They banned Belarus from Eurovision in 2021 because the national broadcaster there was deemed to be state-controlled and hostile to free journalism. Yet now, the EBU themselves are actively silencing community media, the very outlets that give Eurovision all year round scrutiny, coverage and analysis. Unlike the mainstream press, which usually shows up for the 2 weeks of the contest and then disappears again, community media platforms like ours offer continuous engagement and critical reflection. What we're seeing here is an organisation shutting down dissent. The EBU is avoiding scrutiny. They are systematically denying access to those who hold them accountable, and they are doing so under the guise of reach and logistical limits, when in reality, some of the most influential and widely followed creators in the Eurovision space are among those who've been excluded. They're getting away with it because community media doesn't have the financial resources or institutional power to push back. We are, for the most part, volunteer-run, passion-driven, and supported by dedicated fan bases rather than corporate sponsors. But that doesn't make our work any less important. If anything, it makes it more so. Because when large organisations act without transparency or accountability, someone needs to speak up. So no, we won't be reporting from Basel, but we will still be watching, we'll still be reporting, and we'll continue to speak out where it matters, because Eurovision is bigger than the EBU. It belongs to the fans, to the artists, to the community.
For the music. For the music.
So welcome to the new news section of the podcast, where we're going to try and quick fire through as many stories that have happened recently as possible. First of all, we've had plenty of announcements about interval at the Eurovision Song Contest. We've got the rough idea of the theme of each show, and the interval seem to correlate. So the first semi-final is about Switzerland. So we do have an interval with a bunch of old Swiss acts, such as Peter Reber from Peter Suhr Mark, Paula from Eurovision Under 69 and 1980, Dawn's Tears from Eurovision 2020-21, and Luca Hani from Eurovision 2019. They'll be doing some sort of interact in that semi-final. Semi-final 2 is going to be about the fans. This is where we speculate there's going to be an interact about Eurovision 2020, the cancelled contest. There's plenty of artists that were in 2020 but announced as interacts, artists such as Destiny, artists such as The Roop, artists such as Effendi, etc, etc. They've also announced that Carrier and Baby Lasagna will be appearing in an interval act together, and that's likely to be in this semi-final as well if it's relating to the fans, fan favourites. The grand final is going to be about winners, and they've announced that one of the Olsen brothers is going to be there, and Nima of course is going to be there. I expect announcements will continue soon as we head further and further to Basel, and also likely we'll hear what on earth's happening with Celine Dion, if in fact anything at all.
In other news, Jurien van der Meer has been appointed as the commercial director for the Eurovision Song Contest going forward. This role was first made public when the EBU's report about the failings of Eurovision 2024 was made public last summer, and it announced that the executive supervisor role would be superseded with 2 new roles. One was ASC director, which Martin Green was appointed to, and the other was a head of brand role. This seems to have been renamed to commercial director, and now Jurien van der Meer has been given the job. Why it's taken another 6 months beyond Martin Green's appointment, we can only speculate, but it's a good thing that Eurovision's top team is now in place. Van der Meer has worked on a number of British reality shows, including The Voice UK, Hell's Kitchen, and I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He's also been a significant figure at French TV production company Banijay. According to the EBU, his appointment is about transforming the Eurovision Song Contest into a year-round global entertainment brand. Maybe they can start by remembering they have a Twitter account.
While we wouldn't normally report commentary lineup changes, there has been one particular one we want to highlight. SVT in Sweden have announced that Petra Mede will be joining Edward af Sillén to commentate on the Eurovision 2025 Grand Final. Petra is no stranger to fans of the contest, hosting the event 3 times, including last year in Malmö. It had been speculated that due to the difficulties and challenges there, Petra wouldn't really be likely to return to host a 4th contest in the event of a near future Swedish win. So, the surprising announcement she would be commentating on Eurovision so soon after last year has come as great news for Petra fans, as it's our strongest indication possible that she could be back in the Globe Arena next year if Kai take the victory in May.
And our Eurovision mascot Lumo has been seen on the streets of Basel. Yes, if you don't remember, Lumo is the mascot of Eurovision 2025 that was designed by Competition, that was announced a few weeks ago, and has had a mixed reaction. Well, now a Lumo costume, or a person in a Lumo costume, has been walking around Basel looking pretty terrifying and scaring everyone, especially as they don't really seem to be selling any Lumo merchandise, and we can quite understand exactly what the logic for it was. But, you know, we still love and adore the Eurocat after 35 years, so maybe Lumo will find a place in all our hearts eventually.
And finally, we're hearing more and more news that Eurovision Latin America might actually be happening. The contest was announced back in July 2022, but since then pretty much all news about it had dried up. That was until the last couple months. The concept is essentially to do Eurovision, but with Latin American countries. Unlike the ill-fated American Song Contest, this would operate under the same model as the Eurovision Song Contest and would see each country represented by one broadcaster who'd send an entry to the contest. From reports we've been hearing, there was a meeting on the 31st of March to decide how the project would move going forward, and aspects such as which country would host it, with a planned grand final taking place in October this year. Since then, there hasn't been any news, and it's likely there would have been a flat-out cancellation if talks had failed on the 31st of March. Most people speculate that as a result talks were successful, and that the team behind it, many of who are working on Eurovision 2025, are waiting to announce all when the world's media are on them in May. So speaking of international versions of Eurovision, you're now hearing the winner of the one and only American Song Contest, Wonderland by Alexa from Oklahoma. On our YouTube channel, we recently posted a recap of the ill-fated contest, and that got us thinking about it. It's been 3 years since Krista Björkman gave us his American experiment, and with Eurovision 2025 being the second in a row that he's been the contest producer of, there are significant grounds to believe that the American Song Contest itself has had a direct influence over many aspects of the main show. The idea was to make a version of Eurovision but for the United States. It launched on NBC in February 2022 and ran for weeks through to May, literally culminating at the beginning of the real Eurovision week. It saw the 50 states plus 5 territories and Washington, D.C., so 56 altogether, compete against each other through 5 quarterfinals, 2 semifinals, and 1 grand final. The people delivering this were a company called Voxovation, who licensed the format from the EBU and took it stateside. Voxovation were the same company working on the previously mentioned Eurovision Latin America, as well as the more elusively uncertain Eurovision Canada. To head up the project, Voxovation brought with them Krista Björkman. Björkman had been originally a Eurovision contestant in 1992, representing Sweden, but went on to become the producer of Melodifestivalen, Sweden's national final for Eurovision. He revamped it in 2002, alongside Svante Stockselius, bringing it to a multi-week format and made it one of the most successful TV shows in Sweden. He was also contest producer at Eurovision itself in 2013, 2016, 2017, 2018 and 2019. This man knew Eurovision, and he knew how to make a successful Eurovision-inspired show that could air for multiple weeks with several rounds. While the show ultimately failed, this was more so due to the cutthroat market of American television than the actual quality of the show. Yes, the show had issues and the format needed fine-tuning, but so did Melfest in 2002. It was far from perfect. The American Song Contest didn't have time to evolve and learn from its mistakes. It had to be an instant success, and it wasn't. There's plenty of highlights in those 8 shows, despite everything which didn't work. We've long speculated that a primary factor in the show not connecting with audiences was that all 56 songs were chosen centrally by Björkman's team and not by each state. Even if national finals would have been impractical at this stage, certainly a small local radio selection could have been organised, or even just a panel of people from each state to choose their entry. There was no feeling ever that, for example, Michigan's song was a song that Michigan was sending. It was just the song representing Michigan. At that point, they might as well have stripped off the names of the states and just made a straight up US version of Melfest. But what is most significant about the legacy of the American Song Contest is how that's now affected the main show. Because in 2024, Krista Björkman and many of his team that worked on ASC were hired to return to the Eurovision Song Contest because Sweden were hosting it again, and their previous employers, SVT, were making it. Most of them have also been carried over by the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation to work on Eurovision 2025 as well, meaning this team now have had 2 years to influence and mould the contest. We can obviously only look at what they did in 2024, but there's certainly some ideas there that seem to have come from the American Song Contest. As well as Björkman, I'd like to specifically highlight Robin Hofwander, the director of ASC, who also directed Eurovision 2024 and will direct Eurovision 2025. He seems to be significant to the most notable change that was borrowed from ASC, and that's the winner's reprise, first seen in ASC, then seen on Melfest, and now on Eurovision. The winner's reprise is no longer a restaging of the performance that won the contest. Now it's a sing-along celebration with the winner on stage with their country's name behind them, the camera team free to do what they want, and euphoria to reign supreme in the arena. I really like it and think it gives an enormous cathartic end to not just the show, but the entire season. There is also no need to bring on props or reperform complex staging. It's a time for the winning song to shine. This first appeared at the American Song Contest. It was carried to Malmö and, in all likelihood, will be there in 2.5 weeks as well. While some innovations were more technical, such as using a progressive video system instead of an interlaced one, others were more creative. Certainly the handheld vertical video moments in the Eurovision 2024 postcards are reminiscent of similar usage in the, albeit much lengthier and talkier, American Song Contest postcards. Before 2024, we heard reports of the team attempting to shorten the show by up to an hour, which ultimately only became 15 to 20 minutes. But I wonder whether similar ideas to those used on ASC to fit its much shorter time slot were muted by Björkman. At ASC, they grouped states together into regions during the jury voting. This meant 56 spokespeople did not have to appear. I wonder if there were discussions about doing the same at ESC, the Nordics voting together, the Balkans voting together, etc. Alas, this didn't happen. What we know is happening, though, is that for Eurovision 2025, the qualifier announcements in the semi-finals are being changed to make things more exciting. While it would be bizarre, as one of the most criticised aspects of ASC with the qualifier announcements, it's not impossible to imagine that perhaps something like that might be carried over by the team. ASC certainly has had a legacy at Eurovision and will likely continue to, even if it crashed and burned in 8 weeks. It might have been a mess, but at least it was our mess.
So that brings us to the end of the show. It's been great being here, and hopefully we'll be back again very soon as we go forth to cover everything that happens at Eurovision 2025, whether the EBU appreciate that or not.
Yes, quite. But thank you so very much for listening to this new revamped format. Tell us what you think of it, whether you like it or not, whether you want us to go back to what we were doing before. Who knows? But thanks for listening. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, wherever else you might get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, and check out our website. But until the next time, thank you so very much for listening, and remember to vote for the music.
Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast, is a production by Benjamin Windybank and Tadeusz Chiswak. The theme music was produced by Joe Telt and Benjamin Windybank, based upon a composition by Michael Nekrasov. Thank you for listening, and remember to vote for the music.